All right, so now we are on chapter 6, which is the chapter which you read yesterday, the one about Julius and the Cervi traveling. So throughout the chapter, you'll notice that there are a lot of pictures like this here, where you have a preposition and then a word and then more or less the direction that the preposition points to, or the type of movement that the preposition points to, because the prepositions in this chapter are primarily movement based, whereas the prepositions from last chapter, so say sine, cum, ex, and things of that nature, are more or less not really about movement. They're more just about position. So there is a general trend with prepositions that the ones which imply motion towards or position in relation to larger things. So for instance, in this chapter, it's all about moving from one city to another. Those sorts of prepositions usually take the accusative. So motion towards or closeness to something is you usually have a preposition which takes an accusative case word. So the accusative is one of the two cases which uses prepositions. The other one is the ablative. It was the one that you learned, and those were the prepositions you learned last chapter. The ablative usually goes with prepositions which either imply motion away from or basically being inside of something. So in or with or motion away from. And then accusative is usually talks about like closeness to something, motion towards something, and things of that nature. So the ablative and the accusative cases, and this is for homework, so make sure that you mark all this down. The ablative and the accusative cases are the only two cases in the Latin language which use prepositions. Now, I want to be clear that this rule isn't absolute. There are words, for instance, apud, which mean more or less the same thing as cum, C-U-M. And apud means more or less the same thing as cum. They both basically mean with, or among. But apud takes an accusative case, so you would only ever find apud with a word that's in the accusative case, and you wouldn't find cum with a word that's in the accusative case. Similarly, you wouldn't find apud with a word that's in the ablative case, and whereas you would only find cum with a word that's in the ablative case. So it's not an absolute rule, but it is a general trend that I think is useful to remember, just because I think it's very, very helpful, and it relates to a bunch of other things. For instance, if you look down at this part of so we're obviously in the Grammatica Latina, the grammatical section of the chapter, but if you look down at this part right here at the bottom half of the page, quo it medus Romam it, quo it Cornelius, is Tusculum it. So what does quo mean? Quo means to what place, or to where, or yeah, anything that implies basically to what place is this person going. So where is Medus going? Medus is going to Rome. So the general trend with prepositions that take the accusative is that it's motion towards. Okay, well, Medus is going towards Rome. Romam. So you can see that Romam here is in the accusative case. And that follows with the general trend. Where is Medus going? He is going to Rome. Where is Cornelius going? He's going to Tusculum. Next, we have unde venit Cornelius. Cornelius Roma venit. Unde venit Medus. is tuskulo wenit. Unde means from what place or from where, or if you want to use an older English word, whence. Whence is basically means from what place. So from where is Cornelius coming? Cornelius is coming from Rome. The general trend, again, with prepositions, is if it's motion away from, then it uses an ablative case. And so ablatives, ablative singular especially, you can tell by whether or not it has basically an A or an O over it, an A or an O at the end of it, with that little line. The macron is what it's called, over top the last syllable. So Cornelius is coming from Rome. From what place is Medus coming? He is coming from Tusculum. So that is sort of the general trend. I think it generally matches up with a lot of other things in Latin. Latin usually uses the accusative for when something is going towards something, whereas the ablative is usually for when something is in something or coming away from it. And this is actually the case with the word in, I-N. In can take either an accusative or an ablative case. If it takes an ablative case, like you've been seeing it ever since chapter 1, remember the very first couple lines of the chapter, Roma in Italia est. Italia in Europa est. So Roma, or Italia rather, and Europa, those words are both in the ablative case. If you go back, you'll see that they have the A at the end, and that there's a little macron there's a little line above the last A in both Italia and Europa. What this means is that those words are in the ablative case. So in the ablative case is more or less our word in. It means something is inside of something else. In plus an accusative case words. So if you were to say in Romam, you would be saying into Rome. You're going into Rome. So you can see the difference there between in with the accusative, meaning motion towards, or in this case, motion into, and then in with the ablative, meaning in the sense of being inside, the way we use in. All right, so this last part is a little bit different. So ubi habitat Lydia Romae habitat, ubi habitat Cornelius, is Tusculi habitat. So it sort of recaps. So you have the accusative, Romam, Tusculum, Capuam, Brundisium, Ostium, and all of these are towards the city. So if it's towards the city, you use the or endings. Ablativus, Roma, Tusculo, Capua, Brundisio, Ostia, ab opito. So it's more or less just recapping these points. If it's towards a city, then you use accusative, the so on and so forth endings. If it's from a city, you're using the o endings. But then if you're at the city, you use a rather rare case that's called the locative case. And the locative case is basically the exact same endings as the genitive. So if you remember the A and the E endings, the A, E, and the I endings in singular, Romae, Tusculi, Capuae, Brundisi, Ostiae. That means that they are in the city. They're at the city, more or less. So you won't need to encounter the locative in almost at all. The only time the locative is used is when you're talking about cities. All right, so I think that should be everything for this week. This video will be for both today and for tomorrow. So you might, if you want, you can rewatch it a couple of times just to get everything. All right, have a good day.